Okay, we'll start with this. It was officially announced earlier today that Shannon Bryan will be running it back with Emma Dolan, now that both fighters are back in the winner's bracket, one loss apiece.
Shannon's lost to Emma a few fights ago. Emma's more recent loss to Irma Garcia a few fights later. It's set to go down October 24th on the undercard of Dalton Smith versus Alberto Puello.
Which is very interesting as a result of Matchroom's strategic partnership with MVP to have some of their girls migrate over there. There have been questions about Matchroom's commitment to the women and whether or not they will continue to promote women boxers.
Well, they're still promoting Shannon.
We had a great conversation about that with Sammy, a friend of the channel, who said, "Jules, it's interesting to note, I remember you talking about how involved Matchroom would be in women's boxing. After the MVP alliance, they still have some women's fights on all of their cards. Maybe not signed, but still pushing women's boxing. They had 2 women's bouts on the Terra Moana card last week. They have Tia May 8 in this one, Brooke Mullen on the MVP show before the bell, Katie and Molly on September 5th, Paige Mirney on the Ben Whitaker card on October 3rd, Shannon Ryan versus Emma Dolan on October 24th. So maybe they're playing a secondary role now, and that's definitely one way to look at it. How I look at it, they're trimming the fat.
Very little remains of Matchroom's original roster of Valkyries, female fighters.
With their star fighter making her exit from the sport next month, they're still looking to use women on their shows, but they're not going to be as committed to those women as they were before, as they are refining their methods. I think landing a Matchroom multi-fight deal is going to be a bit more difficult than it was before to get them to make that commitment, that investment to a fighter.
They're not just going to sign any old buddy like what they were doing before.
As there were some signings that you could have questioned what exactly would be the end game, whereas now, about a decade from the big women's boxing boom of 2016, with a lot more time in the game and understanding of how things work and how to better promote these women boxers, they're going through things with a fine-tooth comb. They've still got a couple of girls on board. They've still got Shannon.
I'm very fond of.
Sports professional record of 11 wins with 1 loss and no draws, 2 recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 12 professional bouts. Her lone defeat came at the hands of Emma Dolan, some fights and some years ago.
29 years old.
To Emma Dolan, who is 28, sporting a professional record of 9 wins with 1 loss and no draws, 1 recorded knockout, having been knocked out once in 10 professional bouts. That lone defeat came at the hands of IBF super flyweight champion Irma Garcia, who blitzed Emma Dolan when they fought, which was not the outcome I expected going into that fight. I had Emma Dolan winning a points decision and lifting the IBF title from Irma. That's not how it happened. But Emma has managed to get back on her feet and dust herself off. She was in action this past weekend in the UK, had a small fight in an intimate setting, and now she's set to run it back with Shannon. Sort of feels like a loser leaves town kind of situation. I feel like Shannon's time at Matchroom hinges on a win or a loss here.
It's interesting because Shannon didn't need to have this fight right here and right now. She's in line to fight for an alphabet title.
Last in action, in May of this year, opposite the ring, Nicola Hopewell, who she blitzed.
Who she stopped in the second round of a contest scheduled for 10 and looked sensational doing it.
Keeping a nice steady schedule of fights, having fought 3 times in 2024, 2 times in 2025, 2 more this year. This fight that she's about to have will be her second fight this calendar year. And as stated, it wasn't absolutely necessary that she fight Emma Dolan next.
Could have been boxing for a title. I figure that before Shannon ascends to world level, she wants to tie up the loose ends.
Avenge the loss, but can she? When they fought, it was difficult for Shannon Ryan, who's the shorter, stumpier, stockier fighter, to close the distance on Emma Dolan getting up on her toes and staying behind the jab because there's a discrepancy in size. Emma's noticeably taller, noticeably longer than Shannon Bryan.
Even though some time has passed, that hasn't all of a sudden changed. Emma is still the taller, longer fighter. She's going to try to make herself difficult to get to. Has Shannon Ryan improved enough that she can win the second fight where she lost the first?
It's important to note that that fight was competitive. It wasn't a whitewash. It's important to note that there was a recorded knockdown in that fight that I don't think should have been ruled a knockdown, as it was a result of a punch behind the head.
Keeping those things in mind and drawing what she can from her previous experience fighting Emma, I'm leaning towards Shannon to win this thing, to close the distance more effectively and work Emma from the inside out, putting on display her punching power and combinations. I am leaning towards Shannon to win, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches.
In the main event, Dalton Smith is keen to remind people what he can do against the former champion Alberto Puello. On January 10th, earlier this year, the 29-year-old from Sheffield announced himself to the world in spectacular fashion when he stopped the dangerous puncher Subriel Matias in the 5th round of a firefight at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. The stunning victory earned Smith the WBC title and immediately made him a major player in an ultra-competitive super lightweight division. Smith, 19-0 with 14 KOs, made plans for a mandatory defense of his title against two-time world champion Puello, but an injury ruled him out of a scheduled June date. The ring's number 1 ranked junior welterweight is looking forward to regenerating that sense of excitement when he returns home to finally fight the tricky Dominican southpaw at Sheffield Arena on October 24th, live on DAZN. Boxing, you enjoy it for a short time, and then it's like, what's next? Smith told The Ring, you need to keep proving yourself. You've got to keep producing these good wins and proving why you're a legitimate world champion.
He absolutely did that. You know, he had to travel for that fight to New York City.
As a result of Subriel Matias' promoters winning the purse bid for the fight, I was shocked when they beat out Matchroom for the promotional rights to host it, and they did it in New York, where Dalton Smith took Subriel Matias out in sensational fashion. I didn't think he was going to win. There have been a number of high-profile comings and goings in the junior welterweight division since Smith became world champion. 3 weeks after he beat Matias, Shakur Stevenson stepped up from lightweight and produced an outstanding display to outpoint Teofimo Lopez and win the Ring Magazine and WBO titles. That result persuaded Lopez to leave the 140-pound division behind. On Saturday night, Lopez challenges Rolly Romero for the WBA welterweight title at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. After a relatively short stay at junior welter, Keyshawn Davis has also stated his intention to move up to the welterweight division. Puello, 32, is ranked number 4 by The Ring, and as well as being an extremely dangerous mandatory title defense, Smith believes that the fight is also a truly significant one for the junior welterweight division. It's a massive fight, he said. Alberto's been on our radar for the last 18 months when he was champion, before we even beat Subriel. We're 2 of the top guys in the division, so it's going to be one hell of a fight. Just so happens that Subriel is a common opponent between them. Subriel beat Alberto Puello.
Yeah, by the skin of his teeth.
Then Dalton Smith beat him. Now Dalton's got to deal with Alberto Puello in what will be Dalton's second fight this calendar year, and it's the same for Alberto. He was last in action last month
against Miguel Bolano in what was a stay-busy fight,
winning by way of a TKO stoppage in the 4th round of a contest that was scheduled for 10. And when they say that Alberto is dangerous, they're not overselling him. This is the definition of a high-risk, low-reward guy, a tricky southpaw with size and length who can box and punch. The kind of guy you don't fight him unless you absolutely have to.
He's durable, too.
Very experienced, with recorded victories over Gary Antoine Russell, who still reigns as a champion now, Sandor Martin.
Tricky, pure boxer from Spain, and of course, Subriel Matias, who Subriel beat him. He beat him on paper, but it wasn't easy. And in that fight,
I feel like Alberto showed more than just his boxing, but his durability also, because we know how Subriel likes to go about fighting a fight. He's a pressure guy, throwing punches and bunches with lots of power on them. And Alberto was able to endure. To a lot of people, Alberto should have won.
Yeah, to some.
So what are the odds that Dalton Smith can do any better? I've only ever seen Dalton Smith in there with a guy like Puello once.
We're not talking about a carbon copy either.
But if you're talking about a stick-and-move outside fighter who wants to stay on the go and stay on the perimeter of the ring, he did fight a similar guy in Canada's own Mathieu Germain in what was April of last year. A moving target and a guy who won't sit in the pocket.
Just like Alberto.
With the difference being that Mathieu Germain was an orthodox fighter, whereas Alberto, he's a southpaw, a legitimate argument that Alberto Puello competes at a much higher level than a Matthew Germain. Still, Dalton Smith has some experience pinning down a moving target, and that is how I think this fight is going to go. I think it's going to be Alberto on the defensive and Dalton on the offensive. He's the one's got to close the distance, get inside, and bang this guy out. And I don't think it's going to be easy, but it helps that Dalton Smith will have home field advantage. The fight is going down in Sheffield.
So if we got to rob this Dominican, that's just what we got to do. Hey, what? I don't presume to be the moral guy, you know. I'm not the hero in the story. I'm just honest. The division is better if Dalton keeps that belt, and I'm not going to apologize for that.
Fuck you, Ree.
This is not going to be easy for Dalton, I don't think. I've never seen somebody have an easy night with Alberto Puello, and I don't think that's all of a sudden going to change in October.
A little bit on the fence when it comes to this one. It's not a foregone conclusion, even with home field advantage, that Dalton Smith wins.
What is shaping up to be a fantastic card in late October. Finally, in men's super middleweight news, Janibek Alimkhanuly tells Hamzah Sheeraz to stop complaining after his recent appearance on the Ariel Hawaii show. Hamzah Sheeraz unloaded on the WBO during his interview with Ariel Helwani, giving Janibek Alimkhanuly plenty of reason to believe the ordered fight is already troubling him. During the interview, Sheeraz called the organization's handling of Janibek a joke and corrupt. His anger focused on the reduction of Janibek's suspension following a positive test for meldonium and the decision to place him in position for an immediate fight at super middle.
Which may seem dubious at first until you actually read through what happened, and that Janibek, unlike so many other fighters who found themselves in this situation, actually provided a reasonable explanation for what happened, backed up by medical documentation.
In any event, the financial reward does not close to matching the risks. Janibek presents genuine danger but lacks the commercial appeal of the division's largest names. Losing to him would damage Shiraz's earning potential before he reaches the fights his team has been building towards. Pressed on his intentions, Shiraz would not say if he planned to fight Janibek. Helwani mentioned an exemption, a step-aside deal, relinquishing the belt, or accepting the order, while Shiraz added a unification as another possibility. He said the decision would come after discussions with his team.
Well, who's available to unify with?
The unification route would likely depend on Queensberry securing Canelo Alvarez if he beats Christian Mabili. Jaime Munguia would be the next realistic option, but neither fight is guaranteed, leaving Janibek as the immediate problem.
Added to it, Hamzah's not exactly on the same schedule as Canelo. Hamzah just fought not but a few weeks ago, whereas Canelo isn't about to fight until October, over a month from now, more like 2.
And then you have to wait and see what happens. Wait and see if he wins, because if he doesn't, is Hamzah going to have the same energy for Christian that he keeps for Canelo? The money's not going to be the same.
I think if Canelo loses, Hamzah would then try to focus on a Jaime Munguia fight, because he's got a title too.
But it's very clear that he is averse to fighting Janibek Alimkhanuly per the WBO's order, to which Janibek responded, "Why doesn't he just say let's fight? This is a sport. If you call yourself a champion, then prove it. Step up, fight the best, and show everyone what you're really made of. Don't sit on a podcast whining and crying about it to get in the ring and fight." Shiraz insisted that he wanted to beat Janibek but stopped short of accepting the fight. That was all Janibek needed to treat the interview as an attempt to avoid him. Facing Janibek still brings considerable risk, even if Iglesias would be the more dangerous fight. If his middleweight form carries to 168, Janibek can beat Shiraz in a grueling contest that offers little financial reward. Shiraz's anger at the order suggests he knows exactly what has been placed in front of him.
It's not about the performance-enhancing drugs, and don't let Hamzah Shiraz's outrage fool you, because he's been chasing around a guy who got popped just like Janibek and Canelo Alvarez. I mean, if it really were about the pets,
and you were really trying to stand on principle, you wouldn't be chasing around Canelo or Jaime Munguia, because he got popped too. Or did everybody forget that after the Bruno Surace fight, he had a doping scandal of his own? And it's like everybody forgot.
the guys you want to unify with found themselves in the exact same situation as Janibek Alimkhanuly. So why do you get outraged over him?
Like I said, It's not because of the peds, it's because he's a high risk, low reward, and Hamzah doesn't want to deal with this, even though he's fought 2 cream puffs in his last 2 outings. The WBO may have treated Janibek favorably.
Yeah, maybe he got lucky. But so is Hamzah Sheeraz, and the fight fans are letting it be known. A guy who goes by Boxing Massacre said, Hamzah does have a point. Janibek doesn't deserve that opportunity as he is a cheat, but at the same time, Hamzah Sheeraz's last 2 opponents from the WBO have been lorry drivers, and I didn't hear him complaining when the WBO gave him those gifts. Sheeraz said, yet he still won't give a damn as a rematch now that he's moved up to super middle. Dude just wants the paydays. Team Batman Boxing, a friend of the channel, said he fought 2 awful opponents, one for a world title that wasn't top 25 in the world, a second defense against a similar guy, and now complaining about fighting a legit opponent? Bad luck.
And a tough titty, bitch.
That if you're looking out there in the boxing cosmos to see how people are reacting to this, there's not an overabundance of support for Hamzah and what he's saying.
There's not some big outpouring of sympathy. One of the only guys I saw crying Hamzah Sheeraz a river was veteran boxing scribe Carlos Linares, who said, boxing wonders why fans walked away. Janibek failed to drug test. Both A and B samples confirmed meldonium.
You think that's why boxing fans have walked away?
His 1-year suspension was announced in February, but made retroactive from December to December, meaning 2 months had already elapsed before it was even made public. The WBO never stripped him at 160.
Yeah, because he proved where the meldonium came from. It came from a prescription drug.
Right, bro, Nat.
Janibek voluntarily vacated the belt. Moving to 168, was immediately ranked number 2 and now has been ordered as the mandatory challenger for the title. So after failing a drug test, he kept his title until he decided to give it up, received a retroactive suspension, and was then awarded with a direct path to another world title?
Isn't that what the WBA and the WBC did with Ryan?
How exactly is that punishment? In boxing, apparently, breaking the rules can get you promoted.
That's not the whole story. I feel like Carlos Linares is choosing not to tell it that Janibek Alimkhanuly, unlike a lot of other fighters who found themselves in this situation, provided a reasonable explanation corroborated by medical documents from the national database in Kazakhstan.
He was prescribed a drug as a result of an emergency room visit which had meldonium in it.
That's why the WBO didn't strip him. That's likely why they reduced his sentence, because his explanation in this situation is a lot better than what we've been seeing from so many other fighters. So why do you insist they be so hard on him?
And whether it's this fight with Janibek or a unification with Canelo or Jaime, Hamzah would still be fighting fighters who tested positive for banned substances, what seems like the industry standard.
So why get bent out of shape about it?